Welcome back to IGN's Gamescom coverage. We are here with Mike Brown, Creative Director of Forza Horizon 5. And I'm very excited. I hope he's excited because they get to talk about Forza Horizon 5. Mike?
Hey Luke, yes, Thank you for having me. Absolutely great to be here. And as always, I am excited to talk about Forza Horizon 5.
That's good, because that's your job. Now, obviously this isn't the first we've seen of Forza Horizon 5, and we've seen some glimpses of the game in the past. Certainly your announcement was very exciting, and we've seen some other glimpses, cars driving about in Mexico. It looks fabulous, but I feel like, for me, the snapshot of this intro drive is like the most impressed I've been so far, and that's certainly not to say that I've not been impressed so far. You could probably draw the logo on the back of a napkin and just hand it over, and I'll be like, yep, I'm in. But I feel like now, it just looks so remarkable. And then I guess my first question is kind of a sort of a bigger picture question, but what do you think it is about, what is it about racing games that makes them so strong coming out of the gate and really being such visual powerhouses whenever new hardware comes into the equation?
I don't know if there's anything specific about racing games, but I do think that the connections we have to the auto industry do lead into it. The auto industry, like the games industry, is always pushing at the cutting edge of technology. They both blend creativity, art, engineering, technology in a way to make things that people are just going to love to spend time with and spend money on. And I think there are crossovers between the way people think about cars and driving and racing and the way people think about video games, and that push for excellence and to play with the very latest technology probably crosses the lines a lot between cars, racing, and gaming. And I feel like that's perhaps a place where that probably leads to that phenomena you see where there does tend to be a really good-looking racing game every time a new console turns up.
Let's drill down, we touched on the opening drive itself, obviously. Let's drill down on it now, because the Forza Horizon opening drives are such a... They really help distinguish the Horizon games, sort of, I guess, against other racing games. Many of which, I love lots of racing games, obviously, but certainly a lot of them are kind of guilty of being kind of like, oh, you're here. Here's the menu. You can hit this and you can start. We'll step back. But the Horizon games are always kind of, I feel like they're ushering you in. They're kind of welcoming you into the game. It's like, here, you're here, come in, watch this, look at what you can do. You always feel at the center of attention, you know what I mean? How much, I've chatted to you in the past, I know they take a lot of work to really get right. It's admirable for something people only ever really play once. How hard are they to get right? And when you turn around to the team and you say, you know what? We're going to drop 4 cars out of a plane, Furious 7 style. And they're like, yeah, okay. How hard are they to nail?
It is a really phenomenal challenge, and dropping cars out of planes, straight away people will say, oh, but our world looks really good, but it looks really good from the camera just behind the car. It's not really meant to be viewed from a plane's perspective. And it's just like, well, I think it'd be really exciting though. So let's see how we can achieve that. And the process of it is, as you touched on, we always have a really powerful opening to the game, and we break ourselves into a little bit of a jail there, because each new game we have to say, well, probably the best bit of gameplay we ever made was the Forza Horizon 4 opening drive, and now we need to make something that makes it, or rather beats it in every single way. And that is a bar that we have to keep pushing higher with every single new game. And so it does force us to both creatively and from a tech perspective think big and try and think of the things we can do to just really wow people. The reason we go so big on the initial drive, I think, is it just sets out the stall. It's all the things that you do and see in the initial drive are things that you can do and see later in the game as well. Perhaps not in such an orchestrated way, but all of those things exist in the game and are experiences that you can and will have if you keep playing. I think that a lot of games, I think they worry too much. Like you say, it's like, oh, here's the menu, and here's the button to walk, and here's the button to crouch, and they worry too much about players getting baffled and confused by really kind of simple concepts that players will probably be familiar with. Where I think if you just start the car already rolling, players will know that they've got to press left to turn left, press right to turn right, and we obviously build those roads such that it's fairly easy to get around, and we make sure we pick cars that are reasonably easy to handle, and maybe even do some little handling tweaks for those drives in particular if there are any rough edges that we need to smooth out. But I do feel that there's a respect for players in that we just go, right, let's just start with the really exciting stuff. Let's not start with a dry or slow tutorial, but rather let's start at literally 100 miles an hour.
For instance, I'm a huge fan of Horizon 3, and it'll always be a sentimental favourite. But I guess the difference between, say, the opening drive there and the opening drive here is that whereas that one kind of blended the cars from one to another, they were kind of overtaking one another and jumping over one another. It was all kind of in that kind of one spot. You're dropping cars all over the map in a plane, obviously, and it speaks to the size of the map that you want to give people these slices of the map and how varied it is, but you don't want an opening drive that takes 12 minutes. It's like, oh, we're going to have to drop them here, and we can't have them drive all the way over here because it's going to take too long. We've got to drop them there in a plane. It says something about the size of the map to me. Is that kind of that feels deliberate?
We wanted to have an initial drive that they didn't have to sit down and say those words, but showed you those words. So we start you on the volcano, we give you an incredible vista that makes the world look huge. You're actually only looking over a part of the world there because the volcano is kind of central in the map. So it's if as you drive around it, there's a kind of a 360 view. But nevertheless, you get a sense of the huge scale of the world. From starting in the volcano, you're in obviously a really volcanic, rocky area. It's in the initial drive, it's snowy and covered in slushy ice. You then, within a couple of minutes, have descended down the volcano and are now in the living desert. We're surrounded by cactuses and sand dunes. I think just in that one example right at the start of the video, we've communicated the kind of scale and diversity. But then the fact that we kind of snap you around the world 3 further times after that and show you a ton of new stuff helps to communicate like those kind of big messages for the game, that it's huge, it's diverse, there's loads to see, there's loads to explore. There's a ton of different cars, there's a ton of different driving experiences. By just cramming all that in, condensed together as much as we can at the start of the game, it really just lets people know what Horizon is about and what kind of differentiates us from other driving games. Nice.
Listen, let's talk about you've previously revealed the presence of the Mercedes AMG Project One. It appeared in the announcement, and now we've discovered it's on the cover of the game, which is exciting. And it's always kind of a fun thing. What's going to be on the cover of the game, and it's always one of these tip of the spear kind of deals. Like it's the Centenario, that's like it's the 100th birthday of Ferruccio Lamborghini, or it's the Senna, which the McLaren Senna. Like what a car! How did the Mercedes thing come up? Because obviously, like I look at Mercedes from the outside in. And you see they're popping up in Car Mechanic Simulator, and they're popping up in Mario Kart. So it feels to me like they must have a similar philosophy when it comes to an appreciation of video games. But yeah, it took to me a little bit about how the Project One thing came up and how that's appeared in the game.
Just for clarity, the Project One we showed at E3 is technically the concept car, whereas it's the AMG One that is on the cover. There are they're very, very similar. AMG probably won't thank me for saying they're similar cars. They're completely different cars. One was a concept car, and one is the real final car. But to answer your question. We obviously had a really good relationship with Mercedes for a long time. I think you touch on they understand the power that video games can have for them, the power that video games can bring to a brand like Mercedes to be able to get their cars looking great in front of audiences that would otherwise be difficult for them to address. Now, the AMG One is a car that costs about $2.1 million, so I don't think they're necessarily seeing it as a marketing opportunity to go and sell a £2 million hypercar on the cover of the game. But I do think they understand the profile that gives to the brand. And while they're not probably going to have that many Horizon players go and drop £2 million on the AMG One, although hopefully they do, Mercedes AMG do a ton of really awesome cars that are also in the game that I think AMG understand that if they can make, when their brand is associated with that, when their brand appears there, when we throw it out of a plane and show it looking really exciting and awesome, then it's a great avenue for them to go and speak to gamers who oftentimes will also be car lovers and can then go out and perhaps maybe purchase themselves a new Mercedes. And I think that the Mercedes, as you touched on McLaren, I think there are a lot of car manufacturers that really understand the mutually beneficial nature of being in a game like Horizon.
Can you discuss a little bit about Events Lab and just how much more juicy that is, I guess, in comparison to Super 7, and whether you'd anticipate, and I feel like you will, because every time these sorts of things get unleashed into the world, the public and gamers start to deliver things that certainly I never thought was possible. And I've heard the refrain from developers, they put out all these UGC tools and then they get stuff back and they're like, whoa, how are they doing that? Is that even possible? And then they're constantly surprised by people, when you throw it out to tens of millions of people. Talk to me a little bit about Events Lab.
Yeah, so in Super 7 you could place ramps and boxes and barriers and stuff. All of it was rock solid. As soon as you've placed it in place, it's the ramp, but it's otherwise non-interactive. So in addition to that, you can now place like breakable and smashable assets. So if you need to slow the player down, you can put some crates and stuff across the path, and they can be smashed when they're hit. You can also, we saw the bowling pins in E3. There are a lot more assets this time around that you can place and customize. You can tweak the colors on some of them as well, so you can get a bit more creative with what your creations look like. There's just in terms of the building blocks, there is a lot more to work with this time. There's a lot more room for creativity there. That stuff, though, if you've played Super 7, it's that with a bit more. The rules of play is where it gets genuinely interesting. So this, as I mentioned the other day, is it's based on the development tools that we use internally, that I've used a lot as a designer here, and it's not quite a full scripting language. I'd stop short of calling it that, but it's very close. It's you create rule sets where it's, if this happens, then this other things happen. When trigger occurs, action should happen, and you can combine these rules in ways that are kind of limitless. There is a lot of freedom in there, and like I said, they're based on the tools that we use to build the modes that are in the game. There are options that we have that we've not yet given to players, but that we haven't. This isn't the end for Event Lab. The feature that players get on day one won't be the final form, as it were. And as soon as players are saying, "Hey, it'd be really great if we could do this," then we can just go and add that. We can just go and unlock that. And throughout the Horizon 5 live program, we're going to be listening to those creators and just responding and unleashing more power to them. Like I say, we're very excited, a little bit nervous, because you can create basically anything with it. So there's real capacity to create modes that make absolutely no sense and just confuse everybody that goes in there. But we have to kind of hope that the curation algorithms that run the back end of the game don't really surface that to a lot of people.
All right, well, fingers crossed. Mike, I'm terrible with dates, so refresh my memory. When does Horizon 5 come out?
We are straight on the 9th of November. If you purchase the Premium Edition or the Premium Add-ons bundle, then you can get early access on the 5th of November.
Wonderful. It's not soon enough, but I'll take it. Mike, thank you for being here. Thank you for chatting Forza Horizon 5 with me.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. An absolute pleasure as always, Luke.
And stick around, because no doubt we have plenty more coverage coming up. I have no idea what it is, but I'm sure it'll be very exciting.